What's going on? This is your complete beginner's guide to the Mavic Air. Alright guys, there is a ton of information to unpack in this video. This video is going to go from the complete basics when you first get your drone, what everything is on the drone itself, and what everything is on the controller. And from there, I'm going to take you through everything in the software. And then once we're done with all of that, we're going to go outside and we're going to take our first flight. Alright guys, so this is for beginners. This is for people that have never flown a drone before, never flown a DJI product, or need a refresher on DJI drones, and you want to know how all the features work on the Mavic Air. Alright, so I'm not going to waste time with a bunch of chit chat because there's a lot that we need to go through in this video. Before we get started though, in the description there is a bunch of additional videos, and these are tutorials and guides for your Mavic Air. They're not specifically geared towards one specific drone, but there's 20 common mistakes, there's some beginner flying tips, all the stuff that you need once you understand how the drone works. So once you go through this video, make sure you go check out those links in the description. Alright, let's get after it. First things first, you got to open and set up the drone. Alright, the key here is you need to get all the stickers off once you get it out of the box. All of the stickers have a little yellow tab on them, so just go around every inch of your drone and pull those off. So with the design of the Mavic Air, the back legs fold down and the front legs fold out. And on the front legs, you have 2 leg extensions and you need to flip those out. The camera has a cover as well. You click the 2 tabs on the sides and you pull it up and out, and that will release the cover. Make sure you don't lose this because you'll use this whenever you're transporting the drone. All right, for the battery compartment, you got to press on the sides and pull to release the battery out of the battery compartment. When you're putting the battery back in, just make sure you push hard enough so you hear a click and the red on the sides of the battery will disappear. All right, let's go over the design of the drone. So there are sensors on the front, the bottom, and the back. These will help you avoid obstacles and help you when you're taking off and landing. For the propellers, you take them on and off by pushing down and rotating left or right, depending on which set of propellers you're using. Now, on the propellers, to know which ones go where, there is a white mark or there's no marking, so it's white or black. And the propeller goes with the corresponding motor. On the back of the drone, there's a slot for a USB-C cable and your micro SD card. The purpose of the USB-C is to offload your footage. You can't charge the battery that's plugged into your drone by using this cable, so don't forget your charger whenever you're traveling. All right, let's move on to the controller. The controller has the same yellow tab stickers, so just go through and pull all those off. At first glance, you'll notice that the joysticks are missing. So what you have to do is open up the bottom doors where your phone's gonna sit, and you'll find the joysticks have nice little slots down there, so you can pull those out and twist them on. Also in the bottom clamp for your phone, you'll find the cable that connects to your phone. It comes with the iPhone in there. DJI provides you with multiple cables, so depending on what type of phone you have, there'll be a corresponding cable for it. Don't worry, we'll go over all the buttons on this controller later. Okay, the first thing you gotta do is, now that you have the drone out, you have it unfolded, you have the controller unfolded, you need to charge all the batteries. It's not gonna be helpful if nothing's charged. So the first thing is just charge the batteries. So pull your battery out of the drone, put it on your charger, and then on the side of the controller, you pull out the tab. There's a micro USB port, and that's where you plug in the charging cable for the controller. DJI has provided a little adapter that goes from USB-C to micro USB for the purposes of charging the controller. So make sure you don't lose that little adapter. So the next thing you need to do is download the DJI Go app. Go in your phone, go to the App Store, and download the app before you proceed. All right, so now you need to turn on your drone, turn on your controller, connect your phone to the controller, and launch the app. So to turn on the drone, you're gonna press once and then hold the power button until all 4 lights light up, and then you'll hear a noise. That means your drone is on. And the same sequence will turn on your controller. So press once and then hold. So press once, release, and then hold. Let all 4 lights light up, you'll hear a beep, and that means the controller or the drone is on. Now for your phone, plug it into the slot in the bottom of your controller and make sure the cable is plugged in properly. So once you're all plugged in, and you turn on the app, it will auto connect and it will take you through the activation. So the activation is a series of screens. It's gonna have you put in a username, it's gonna have you put in a drone name, it's gonna take you through a test to make sure you understand the rules of flying. So make sure you go from screen to screen and do everything, and when you're done with that, it will say that you're ready to go. So once you're ready to go, the first thing you need to do is check the status of the drone. So you're gonna go up to this button up on your app, and it's going to show you the status. And if there's a firmware update, it'll tell you here. Also, if you click back to the home screen of the DJI app, it's going to auto check your firmware version of your controller, your drone, your battery, everything that's plugged in at the moment. And if there's any updates, it's going to put them at the top of the screen. And make sure when it's your first time flying, you're just unboxing, go through and do all the firmware updates. I know some people say that there's issues when you do firmware updates because things are not completely tested. So if you're worried about that, make sure you go check on some forums, make sure you see that the updates are all clear, and then do the update. Personally, I've never had issues, so I always do the updates that are recommended to me on the app. So now let's go over every button on the controller and the app itself. So the controller is kind of an in-between between the Spark and the Mavic if you've flown those drones. You have your main controls on this controller itself, and then the rest of the controls for the drone are on the app. But there's a few things you need to know about this controller before we get into the app. So to open the antennas, you have to lift them straight up and then rotate them so they're both facing forward. One rotates clockwise and one rotates counterclockwise. And then the bottoms, they open up by just pulling out on the bottom two tabs. Now on your left side, you're gonna have your cable that goes to your phone, and it runs up to the top where it plugs into the controller. And DJI provides a nice cable, so it's very clean. On the front, on the far right, you're gonna have your power button. You click once, and then you hold to turn the power on. Underneath that, you have your right joystick that moves the drone forward, back, and then sideways, left and right. Next to that, you have an FN button. So that's a function button, and you can assign that to do a few things. We'll explain what you can assign once we get into the app. Next to that, in the center of your controller, you have the sport mode. So when you're flying, if you want to go faster and you want to kick it into sport mode, that's where you turn it on. It's just a quick flip of the button. Next to that, you have your pause button, which will stop the drone if you were flying in an automation mode or pause it in any situation. I personally have never really used this button, but it's there. Next to that, on the far left side, you have your left joystick. When you push up, it flies the drone upwards, down goes downwards, and then left and right rotates the drone, as if you're panning a camera. And then on the far left side, you have your return to home button, and that when you click it will bring your drone home to the home point you set. So let's go to the top of the controller. So if you're holding the controller on your top right side, you have two buttons. The front one takes a photo, and then the back one is another assignable button. So you're gonna assign that in the app as well. On the far left side, you're gonna have your record button, and that's for video. And then you're gonna have your gimbal tilt up and down. So you're gonna use this to manually tilt your camera up and down. And you can adjust the speed of that in the app. So that is everything on the controller itself. All right, we're now in the app. And as I showed you earlier, when you click the top left corner, that's where it goes back to the main screen. So start your flight, and let's go over everything that you need to know about the app. So next to the DJI is the ready to go vision, and this will say GPS when your GPS is engaged and it's ready to go. So it'll turn green and it'll just say GPS. When you click this, it's going to show your aircraft status. So your overall status is what you want to look at first, and you want to make sure that it's normal. Everything's good to go and there's no issues going on here. Okay, and then you can scroll down and you can see there's a few things that you can do from this screen. It's going to show your flight mode first. You're going to set your max altitude here. So if you want to change your max altitude, that's where you're going to change it. Your compass is going to be calibrated here. So if there's any issue and you need to calibrate your compass, you'll do that here. Right now it's showing as normal, so I don't need to calibrate it. You really only need to go in and calibrate your compass when it asks you to do it. And that's the same with the IMU. You're only going to calibrate the IMU if there's a major issue with the drone and it needs to be recalibrated. Next is the ESC status, which is the electronic speed control, which is used to control the motors. So if there's any issues here, it's going to be something going on with your motors. Okay, your vision sensors, if there's any issues with your sensors, that's where it will show. Next is your remote control mode. When you first went through the setup screens, you got to choose which style you like to shoot in. I always shoot in mode 2. This is where you change it if you want to do mode 1 or mode 3, or you want to do a custom. It's going to show your remote controller battery here as well. Mine's at 79%. And this is also where you can do your button customization. So like I said, there's the FN, which is on the front of your controller, and the C, which is on the top. You click the button and then you figure out which action that you want the button to be used for. So you can play with these and see which one you like most for when you're flying. So personally, I like to use the gimbal recenter, and that brings the gimbal up to the front status wherever it is, so it's an automatic snap. And then the top, I like to toggle map view and live view. So I'll show you, you scroll down, I click my front button, it snaps up, and now my top button is going between the two modes, the map and the live view. We'll go back into the menu, and then underneath that you'll see your aircraft battery. So it's at 94%, and your aircraft battery temperature. And that will just show your temperature so you can see if there's any issues, if it's getting too hot or too cold. It's going to show your gimbal status underneath that. Right now it's showing that it's normal. If there's any issues with the gimbal, you'll see it here. And then your remaining SD card capacity, that will show you how much time and data you have left on your SD card. And also this is where you can go in and format your internal storage. So I just cleared my internal storage, and now we're back to the main screen. So that's a good menu to know where all these items are, because there's going to be a lot of situations where you'll need to get into that menu. So next to that, it's going to show you what mode you're flying in. Okay, so next to your flight mode is your GPS signal. So this will show you how many satellites you have and how strong it is, so you can see if your drone is flying with enough signal from GPS. Next to that is going to show your 3D sensing. You can click that and it will go straight to your visual navigation settings. All right, we'll go into this in a minute. And then next to that is your Wi-Fi. And again, when you click that, it goes to your Wi-Fi settings in your menu, and you can see all the stuff that's going on with your Wi-Fi. And we'll go back to that in a minute. Next to your Wi-Fi is your battery. So you click that, it's going to show all the information about your battery. And then next to that is 3 dots. So when you click that 3 dots, you're going back to this menu that we keep flipping in and out of, but it goes down to the general settings at the bottom. So using these buttons up top here, you can go to any individual menu automatically, or you can click any of them and then use the left menu bar to go to all these settings. Okay, so before we go into the general settings, let's keep going over what's on the screen. So you'll see underneath that bar that we just went over, there is a green bar, and that shows a visual representation of how much time you have left in the air. So it's green, that means you're good to fly. When you hit that H and the yellow, it's time to head home, and the red is emergency, you're getting low on battery. So that's basically an entire representation of your entire battery. Okay, so just under that on the right side, it's going to show your capacity and what you're shooting at. So if you're on video, it's going to show your resolution and your frame rate. If you're on photo, it's going to show you if you're shooting JPEG or RAW, and it's going to show how much time you have left or how many photos you have left. Okay, next to that is going to be your card settings, and at the moment I don't have a card in, so you can see that it's showing red, but there it will show how much capacity you have on that card. Next to the micro SD section is going to be all your information about your exposure. So your white balance is first. Right now mine's on auto. Your exposure compensation is next, and that's if you're flying in auto. So if it's too dark and you bump that up +1, it's going to go one stop over the auto settings think that you're flying at. So we'll go into that a little bit more later. It's going to show your shutter, and then it's going to show your ISO. So that's your exposure settings, so you know what's going on. And they're the same on both photography and video. Let's keep going down the right side. So the next button down is going to flip between photography mode and video mode. All right? And then underneath that is your record button for video, or the button to take photos. To the left of that shows your gimbal. So when I pull the gimbal wheel down, you can see that the dot goes down, and when I pull it up, it goes up. That's showing where the gimbal is on its range of movement. Underneath that is all your camera settings, and we'll go into that in a little bit. And then at the far right corner is going to be your playback. So that's where you're going to see all your photos that you've taken. Okay, so moving across the bottom of the screen, you're going to see all your flight telemetry. So this is all the information about your height, your distance, how fast you're going, all that good stuff. So that's where all your information comes there. It also shows your vision sensors. So right now you can see 0.3 feet. So you got to watch these for everything that's going on when you're flying. Okay, next to this is your map. And when you click that with your finger, it just toggles between your map view and your camera view. And when you're in the map view, you can see on an overlay of where your drone is flying in the world. Okay, above that is going to be your button to allow your aircraft to avoid objects when flying backwards, because the Mavic Air has sensors on the back of it. So you can turn this on here, APAS. Above that is your intelligent flight mode. So this is where you'll go in and you have all these cool intelligent flight modes, which at first I wouldn't say use any of these until you've got a sense of what flying's actually like, and then start getting into what quick shot, active track, all that good stuff is. They're really cool modes, they're awesome to play with, but first learn just the basics. Okay, above that is your return to home button. So when you're flying and you're actually out a distance away, you can click that and that will bring your drone back to the starting point, just as we talked about on the controller. And then the button above that is your takeoff button. so you can slide to take off, and that is how the drone will auto take off. You can also use your thumb controllers to take off, and we'll get into that when we're ready to fly. Okay, there's a lot going on this screen, and it's good to know what every button and what every piece of information is used for. Now let's get into some more of the menu settings so you know where everything's at. So let's click the three dots in the corner. It's going to bring up your general settings, and we're going to go through. Before we go over our general settings, let's go over our main controller settings. So this is the top button on this menu bar. You're going to see your remote identification. So this is an identification that's specifically given like a license plate. So you can put your information here so people on the ground can understand what drones are flying around them. Underneath that is your home point settings. So the first one is set your current aircraft position as the home point. So wherever your drone is at this point is going to be your home point, and the drone will go back to that when you click the failsafe. And the second one is to set your home point wherever the controller is. And so this, if you personally have moved to another spot, you might want to click that so that the drone will go back to where you're at and not where it started from, or not where it's at currently. So that's the difference between the home point settings. Underneath that, you're going to have your multiple flight modes. So this allows you to turn your sport on and off. If you have this off, the button in the middle of your controller won't do anything. Underneath that, you're going to have your return to home altitude. So you can basically set a return to home altitude so that whenever you go into your settings to return to home, it's going to fly to a certain altitude before flying back. So this is where you set that altitude. Underneath that, you have your beginner mode, and if you have your beginner mode on just to play around, this is where you'll turn it off. Again, here's another spot where you can set your max flight altitude, and you can also enable flight distance, so it'll only allow you to fly a certain distance from you. So you can have that on or off. So in your advanced settings, you have a few different things you can do. You can really dial in your thumb controllers and how they respond to your movements. I suggest just leaving these as they are until you get better with your drone, but this is where you can start playing with those settings of how sensitive everything is. This is also where you can reset your IMU and your compass. So you can click in here, you can calibrate your compass, and you can calibrate your IMU here. Underneath this, you have more settings that can play with how your drone responds to movement. And then at the bottom, you're going to have your remote controller signal loss. So this is what your drone does if it loses connection to your controller. I like to have mine return to home, but this is where you can set it to landing or hover. So if you lose connection, you can just have it hover somewhere, or you can have it land wherever it's at. I personally like return to home. The next section is your visual navigation settings. So this is where you can turn on or off your obstacle avoidance. So that's the first button right there. You turn it on or off. You can enable obstacle avoidance when you tap fly, so that's in automation mode, and this is where you'll turn on obstacle avoidance. You can enable backward flying, so this allows you to track a subject and the drone will fly backwards. If this is not on and you're tracking a subject, your drone won't fly backwards. And then underneath that is your enable obstacle avoidance and active track. Again, when you're tracking someone, this will start avoiding objects and continue tracking your subject wherever your drone's flying. And then the last thing is display a radar chart. So when you go back to your main screen, you can see I have things 2 feet in front of me, and that's showing the little radar chart at the top, how close those objects are. So there are some advanced settings for the sensors. The first is to allow you to use your downward sensors to keep your drone hovering and not just using your GPS. The second is landing protection. Your drone will automatically detect if there's any issues when it's trying to land. And then the last is return to home obstacle check. Your Mavic will automatically avoid obstacles when it's returning to home. So personally, I keep all these on, but if you for any reason you turn them off, that's where they're at. Okay, next is your remote controller settings. So here's your stick mode. You can adjust that again there. And then also your button customization. There is another menu here to do the same. There's a few buttons that you'll find in multiple menus throughout this software. All right, and then at the bottom, that's where you can link your remote control if there's any issues. Okay, next is your Wi-Fi settings. This is just shows you what's going on with your Wi-Fi signal. Next is your aircraft battery. You can set when you want your aircraft to have a low battery warning. I always set mine at 30%. It shows your voltage and it shows your temperature. It also shows your flight time here, and then underneath that is your details, and it shows how many times your battery has been charged, your serial number, all that good stuff for the battery. Okay, next is your gimbal settings. You can set your gimbal mode here, which is first person or follow, and then you can go to your advanced settings, and this is where you can set some extra stuff about your gimbal. There's 3 different configurations here, so you can set different configurations and just click onto them when you want to have a specific type of setting. So you have your speed, which I always bring mine down because I like to have a slower gimbal speed. You can extend, so it goes higher up. which is kind of a cool feature. And then you have your gimbal pitch smoothest, which means it's going to feather slower in and out. And then you can just play with these settings and come up with some different settings of your own. Okay, the last is your general settings. So this is where you can set your measurements unit. You can do your live streaming from this. So from here you can choose your platform and just do a straight live stream. Kind of cool. It shows your map, so you can cache your map in the background, so it shows you where you've been flying. Your video cache, that's where it's going to cache what you're shooting onto your phone. So you can set your maximum here. So like I want to have 8 gigabytes on my phone, so it will automatically record what I'm shooting onto my phone as well, up to 8 gigabytes. And then you can clear this automatically once it hits that limit, or you can have that turned off. And then if you want to manually clear your cache, that's where you do it here. And then also there's a record audio with video cache, and what that does is that allows you to record the audio from your phone. So if you're talking or doing anything, it's going to record that with your cache. And the last few things is your device name. That's where you set your device name. You can set your full string as a single or double finger, and then about just gives all your information and all your versions that are going on your drone. Okay, the last thing we need to go over is your camera settings. So we are in video mode, and you're going to click these 3 lines with the dots underneath your record button. When you go in here, you're going to have all your settings for the camera. So first is your exposure. You're going to be able to set to manual or auto, and then if it's on auto, you have your exposure compensation down here at the bottom. So it's going to auto set your exposure and then add a stop above that if you put plus. And then if you go minus on your exposure compensation, it's going to drop it down based off your auto. All right, you go in your manual settings, you can set your shutter speed, and you can set your ISO, so you can dial in your settings for your exposure there. The next screen is going to be where you can set your resolution, your format, your white balance, your style, and your color. So you have 4K, you have 2.7, you have 1080. This is where you'll go in, you'll click what it is that you want to do. I want to do 1080 at 120 frames a second. Go up here to 4K, and I'm going to shoot at 30 frames a second. Great. So the next thing is your video format. You can shoot MP4 or MOV. Your white balance, so you can set this custom at the bottom. Allows you to set it based on Kelvin, and then the rest are auto. So you can do sunny, auto, etc. If you're on auto, things might fluctuate a bit, so you might not want to shoot auto. Your style will allow you to change your sharpness, your contrast, and your saturation. So there's a few that have already been set up here: standard, landscape, and soft. And then you can go in and dial in +3 or -3 for any of the settings. Okay, and then underneath style, you have color. On the Mavic Air, you have normal, or you have Cine like D, so that you can do more color grading later. All right, and in the last menu, you're going to have the rest of your camera settings. So you have your histogram, which allows you to see your exposures from darks to lights, your smart arm LEDs, which allows you to turn on and off your LEDs on your drone. So if you're getting issues with lights hitting the image of whatever it is that you're shooting, you can turn them off here. You can get an overexposure warning, which will tell you when your image is overexposing. Next is your video caption. So this adds a subtitle to your video to show your coordinates, your home point coordinates, etc. Underneath that, you'll have your grid. So this throws a grid over your image, and there's a couple settings to show your center and your rule of thirds. This is a great one to use just to get cinematic looking footage. This is where you can do your anti-flicker. If you're having flickering issues on your image, this is where you can set it to change to 50 Hertz or 60 Hertz. File index mode is basically the file naming. Basically, you can have it set to reset every time, or have it be continuous every time you put a new card in. You can save unstitched panoramic photos here, so take each photo individually and save them. And then it shows your storage location. So this is where you can choose which storage location you want to write to. You have your format, your SD card here, format internal storage, and reset all camera settings, so you can reset everything from here. When you flip it over to photo mode, you're going to have the same menu settings on this menu. You go over to your photo, there's going to be a few differences. So in your photo, you're going to have your single shot, your HDR shot, your multiple, your AEB mode, which is going to take multiple photos of different exposures, your timed shot, and your panoramic mode. Now when you click any of these modes, you're going to have a series of options depending on the mode. And on the far left is your camera, and it's the same settings as when you're doing video. Okay, the last thing to go over is the bottom right corner. That's where you can view all the photos or videos that you've taken. You can go in here, you can see your photos, videos, and then you can click between your SD card or your internal storage. And when you click an image, you're gonna have a bunch of information. So you can add it to your favorites, you can share it, by using a bunch of different share options. You can delete it, you can save it to your phone, and you can get all the information about your photo or your video clip. All right, that is everything in the app that you need to know. All right, guys, I know that was a lot of information, and I know you just want to get out there and fly, so let's go do that right now. But first, make sure A, your batteries are charged on your drone, your controller, and your phone. And lastly, make sure you have a micro SD card plugged in. I know the Mavic Air has some internal storage, but just to be safe, always bring a micro SD card as well, just so you always have extra data. Next step is let's go outside, let's find somewhere safe to go fly. And now I'm outside. Beautiful nature. The key from here is going out and finding somewhere empty, somewhere where you can be alone, somewhere where you can just practice, because now comes the point where you're actually going to fly. You want to be somewhere where you can fly and you're not going to get in trouble for flying, because this is your first time flying. So what you're going to want to do is just find a launch pad. So I've got a nice little launch pad right over here. Looks like the perfect spot. Okay, so first things first, you're going to take the drone up and you're going to let it hover for about 30 seconds. And to take the drone up, to launch it on the screen, you're going to have your button where you swipe to launch. That's the easiest way to do it. You set the drone down, make sure your GPS is connected, make sure that there's no issues with the drone, with the connection, make sure that everything is functioning properly. Swipe, take it up, let it sit, swipe, take it down, and all of a sudden now the drone has landed and you know everything's working. You always do that test first because you want to make sure that the drone functions properly, that everything's working when you take off and land and do all that good stuff. There is another way to take off. You can take both your thumb controllers, bring them inwards, and that will start the propellers, and then you push up on the left joystick and that will take the drone off. So that's the manual way to do it. The auto way is on the app, and to take it back down, you just need to hold down on the left thumb joystick until it hits the ground. Keep holding down until the propellers shut off. All right, guys, you've taken off, you've let it hover for 30 seconds, and then you drop it back down. From here, take it up and just start flying and practice, practice, practice. Guys, in the description below, I'm gonna link a ton of videos that you can look at from here. These are what you need to do to start learning how to fly better, to start getting more involved in creating awesome drone footage, cinematic footage. There's a lot of stuff here. It's for the Mavic, it's for the Spark, it's for all the different drones, but all the DJI products and drones in general all work together in the same way. So once you have the basics down of the Mavic Air, which is what you just learned, now it just takes practicing and learning new skills and coming up with new ways to fly so you can get awesome cinematic footage, awesome photography, all that good stuff. All right, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I've got a lot of awesome stuff coming. I just got the Mavic Air and I'm gonna be shooting a ton of content with it. I've got a lot of awesome cinematic filmmaking tutorials, photography tutorials, editing tutorials. There is a lot on this channel. And also me and my wife, we travel, we do a lot of different stuff, so we're always exploring, we shoot some cool vlogs. There is a lot of good stuff coming, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, go in the description, check out the links. All right, guys, that is it. I hope this video was helpful. Have an awesome time flying your Mavic Air. Happy flying, and be safe when you go out there and do some exploring in the skies. All right, guys, see ya.